as we are looking at lessons, and the title of this is Now That I'm a Christian at Eastern Meadows, it's lessons that you would want a person to know, to understand basic things that are having to do with what the Bible teaches, but then in kind of a specific way here at Eastern Meadows as well. Well, up to this point, it's been, somewhat generic as far as not so much specific to Eastern Meadows, but at the very end, I've got pictures of our elders, so it's a little more specific, and we'll have very little time really at that point. However, if someone was new to Eastern Meadows, that's one thing you really want new members to know, who the elders are of a congregation. In fact, I kind of hope it be this way, that if you found yourself in a new place, in a new congregation, one of the first things you'd want to know is, who are the elders here? And, kind of interestingly, if you have websites, most websites will mention who the elders are, who the deacons are, oftentimes have pictures of them, and as well as the minister or ministers that they may have. And I have an idea that people go to websites. Among the various things they may look at is to see, how many and who are the elders. Of course, if it's a congregation that we're not familiar with, usually we don't know who those people are. But that is of an interest. Well, here's a lesson on elders. What are they and who are they? And to start with, we're limited on time, and I know that. And this lesson, somebody could take multiple lessons and look at this on elders. What are they? Who are they? But there's going to be some occasions I say, let's turn to. And first of all, let's turn to this passage in Acts 20. And part of the reason for turning here is I want you to see what elders are called and why it is easy to see and absolutely true that elders are known by these different names. Soon you go to Acts chapter 20, verse 17, you find Paul returning on one of his missionary journeys. You get down to verse 17. Now from Miletus, that's where he'd landed, and is sent to Ephesus and called the elders of the church to come to him. So this is the elders of the church at Ephesus. But keep in mind, it's the elders. And so then they arrive. He has a number of things to say to them. And amongst of what he says, look at verse 28. Pay careful attention to yourselves. Remember, it's the elders that he's speaking to. And to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. So here, the elders are called overseers. So if you were to say, they're the elders, they are. You say, they're the overseers, and yes, they are. Now, sometimes that word translated overseers from noun episkopos would be also translated, or could be, bishop. And so you've kind of got now four different words. Elders, presbyteros, sometimes you might hear the term presbytery. So presbyter, elder, overseer, bishop. Okay, all those terms are referring to this same group of men. Now turn over to 1 Peter chapter 5. And once again, what I'm wanting you to see is in your own Bibles where, yes, how these terms are used. So it's not just your, taking my word for it, but seeing, okay, here's a Bible place, and here's what they're called, and they're called otherwise. Chapter 5, verse 1, so I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ. So, okay, it's elders that he's writing to in a very specific way in 1 Peter chapter 5. Get down to verse 2, it says, shepherd the flock of God which is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion but willingly, as God would have you. So he's talking to the elders, and he says, shepherd the flock. Well, the one who shepherds is a shepherd. And this Greek word poimen could be translated shepherd or pastor. And so now suddenly we see it's kind of clear these elders or presbyters are overseers or bishops or shepherds or pastors. So various terms referring to the same men.
Steve, it's not the phrase to feed in Acts 20:28. Isn't that from boy man also? To feed,
Yeah,
shepherd,
yeah.
and to.
And depending on kind of the translation, for instance, here in 1 Peter 5 verse 2, the King James says feed. Almost every other translation I've looked at, even the New King James and the ASV is going to say shepherd.
Standard says tend the flock.
In a lot, okay, I missed that one then.
1 Peter
5:2. Most translations do say shepherd. By the way, then number C, what is implied by the name elder? You hear the name elder, what do you think? Old, okay. And we'll say this, old is relative, but old, and what goes with that? Hopefully, wisdom. Anything else? Okay. What is implied by the name overseer?
able to superintend.
Able to superintend. In fact, if you look up the word overseer, some dictionaries will have superintend as kind of a part of the definition. One definition said to take care of, oversee, or care for, which I'm not sure there's the best definition in the sense of it came from the dictionary, but a definition that's got its own word in the definition is kind of almost circular. To take care of, to oversee, or to care for. Now, here is an interesting thing, too, about this word. As it's used generally, what you oversee, generally, what you oversee, who does it belong to? Yourself or someone else? Usually, as you would see the term overseer or superintend, it's usually with regards to, it's not actually yours, it's somebody else's, and you're doing a task for them, which I think is worthy of note, because it's kind of this way. Elders in a congregation, no, it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the Lord, and they are doing a work for the Lord as they oversee and superintend. Also, with regards to an overseer, what would this suggest about authority? The overseer, for those under the overseer, he possesses authority over them. And one thing with regards to an overseer or superintendent, and I think particularly this word superintend, a superintendent on a construction site. His job is not necessarily to build it himself. Rather, he gets all these other folks in and watches and makes sure that they do it right. He's watching to make sure it's done properly. And so all of these things, I think, are inherent in this word, overseer. Okay, now the word shepherd or pastor. Tell me the word shepherd. What comes to mind? The flock, okay. He's not much of a shepherd. He doesn't have a flock. Now what does he do for the flock? I got to feed. What? Protects, feed, protects. Tends. Guides or leads. Okay, and so it's kind of like you take these words and think, what do they mean? And then you apply it to these men who are elders of the church. And I think you've gone a long way towards just visually seeing what they are to do. Now, elders were first appointed in Acts 14:23. Yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no, because elders are mentioned in Acts chapter 11, verse 30, which would imply they've been appointed. But as concerns mention of them being appointed, Acts 14:23, the first place, and that, of course, coming back through the first missionary journey. And what are the implications to be made from the fact that it is elders, plural, appointed? Not a one-man rule. I was listening to, and by the way, it's when you see this elders, it's plural. It's not just this occasion. It's generally, that's what you're finding. I was listening to a lesson by Brother V.P. Black this past year, and I don't remember if it was, he did a number of lessons on leadership. I really don't remember if it was in that section of lessons I was listening to, but he made mention of at a congregation. He didn't say where and didn't say when, though I think it would have been quite a number of years ago. And mention was made of, what would happen then when an elder resigns, and what would happen if there's just one left. And his response was, and he was serving as an elder, not talking about Brother Black telling the story, that individual, that man who was serving as an elder, said, well, I just keep serving as an elder. And the objection was made, well, there has to be a plurality of elders. He says, not really. He says, there's really only ever one anyway. He says, there may be several who are called elders, but it's just one, and the rest just kind of go along with him. That was real. This is what a man said, and Brother Black relaying the story. Well, that ain't the way the Bible presents it. There's a plurality. Well, there are qualifications for the men who are to be appointed elders. You find this in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1. Now, all of these lessons, we're cramming a lot into a little bit of time. If someone were studying elders, I promise you, they would spend quite a number of lessons, and they would have multiple lessons just on the qualifications of elders, probably themselves. Years ago, I was, this kind of gets us into the next part, kind of. Okay, some of the qualifications. This would be a listing from 1 Timothy chapter 3. If you were in Titus chapter 1, you'd find the wording might be slightly different, but, it is really much the same. But some of these listed in 1 Timothy 3 are above reproach, husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, apt to teach, not a drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money, managing his own household well, with dignity, keeping his children submissive, not a recent convert, and well thought of by outsiders. Let me ask you this question. This is just in your opinion, what do you think would be one of the most challenging qualifications for men to meet today?
In my limited experience, one of the things that I've seen that is not met by many men who desire to be elders is being apt to teach. Either they don't want to teach or they can't. And I think that's one that really is a lot too many men fall short of.
And if somebody says exactly what does apt to teach mean, heard one person put it this way, well, I know it means they're more apt to than apt not to. But anybody else?
I think along the lines of apt to teach, it's not just a willingness to teach, it's a willingness to teach and ability to teach sound doctrine.
Okay, and which in Titus, the idea of sound doctrine is mentioned specifically. And I just say this, it's very, very sad when a congregation begins to be led by elders who do not know what soundness is. And in that case, there will be departures. Hospitable? Okay. And I recognize this right now is just opinions, but it's kind of to make us think in terms of it's not just a given that these things are easily attained. Some things, actually, some of this may have much to do with the kind of the personality the fellow has, even. The good and the bad of his own personality and what he has to deal with.
You mentioned a number of qualifications, and we know that we're all different. You may have a certain qualification, and all may be stronger than that you are. The fact is, though, that an elder should have all of these qualifications to a discernible degree.
very wise statement, if you didn't hear Brother Don, that an elder should have all of these qualifications to a discernible degree. We're all different. Kind of one may excel in a greater way, but yet has each of these to a discernible degree. Now see, what is the most discussed variety of opinion of these qualifications? What? The children? Is that what?
Husband of one wife, about when a wife dies.
Okay. And this is opinion, okay, because we're saying, what do you think is the most discussed or questioned? For me, what I've heard in my lifetime would be, okay, what does having faithful children mean? And then secondly, having to do with what does husband of one wife mean, what are the implications, and especially with regards to if the man has been serving as an elder, then becomes a widower. What, James?
Many years ago, our Lord, most discussed thing we had was that you have children. Just got to come up with children.
You know, I was teaching, this is Eastern Meadows, 15 years ago. We were at the old building at that point. Now, I think we're 1 Timothy chapter 3 rather than Titus chapter 1, but we were at the point of going through elders' qualifications. We were going kind of on normal clip, normal pace, and then we hit the having faithful children, or children that believe, and we came to a screeching halt. And the remainder of that Sunday was given over to a Bible class discussion. The next Sunday we came back, the entirety was that same discussion. And okay, I'm the teacher, so I was going to exercise the teacher's authority in the classroom. I felt like, okay, that's enough, and we had, I just say this, there were the extreme of opinions on that within the class, and they expressed them. And so I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give a kind of a summary of comments that have been made. I want to then put a little perspective on it, then we're going to move on. And I did that in about 5 minutes, and I basically just had to stop the class discussion on that subject, because it's kind of like we couldn't leave it alone. But it was time to move on. And I would hope that when people approach that they understand this. With regards to the other qualifications, okay, some are kind of a cut and dry. And then some, let's face it, some do better at it than others, but there's a discernible degree. But yet we haven't required him to achieve perfection in that. And I'd wonder if that same principle could be applied to this as well. And like I said, the second probably husband of one wife. And last year, the Freed Harmon lectures on 1 and 2 Timothy, and a friend of mine from college days, he had the task of the subject of husband of one wife. He did a very good job with it. And okay, D, we'll move on. What were the implications of the qualifications in Titus 1:9, and it's important for the elders' work? All right, maybe you've got your Bibles, Titus 1:9, and I know that we don't have time to read every verse. But Titus 1:9, it says, he must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine, and also to rebuke those who contradict it. So what are the implications of this qualification and its importance for the elders' work?
The elder's responsibility to ensure that what's being taught within their congregation is sound, that it's true to what
they were taught by the apostles, as well as refuting or rebuking any false teachers that may come upon.
Very good. And I hope y'all heard him because I'm not going to repeat it.
I was going to say the last part of that is, from what I've noticed, is probably one of the things I've seen that people need to work on is their ability to deal with conflict. And some people just ignore it, they stay away from it, they avoid it, and so it ends up, if there is some false teaching or something going on, a lot of times it just goes on because I don't want to deal with it.
There is the potential of dealing with conflict in the sense of rebuking those who contradict it. But very important, sound doctrine. Knowing truth so you recognize non-truth. Now, the work of an elder, we got to kind of hurry. He is to exercise or take the what? Oversight of the congregation. 1 Peter 5:2. We kind of talked about the implications of this word oversight. It's important for congregation to realize this is what the elders are to do. Take the oversight. Okay, B, he is to blank. 1 Timothy 5:7. Anybody fill that in? The word rule is used, R-U-L-E, which implies he exercises authority. Now, I think that 1 Peter 5:2, exercising the oversight, that implies some authority. Also, though, here he is to rule. Now let's say this, what limits, okay? There's an element of authority that he has. What limits that authority? God's word to start with. He cannot rule beyond God's word. It's all got, Don, what? Okay, and then over here.
The eldership has the authority for the congregation, so one elder can't say, I'm going to ignore what the rest of you say, this is the way we're going to do it, you're going to have to listen to me. The authority resides in the eldership. When they make decisions, each elder has to abide by that decision of the eldership itself.
Okay. If you didn't hear Dave, he's talking about, in other words, as we ask what limits the elder's authority, and he said the eldership. In other words, it is a plurality of elders. And it's not like one can be the renegade, as it were, and bypass the eldership. Yes, authority. Limited in the sense of God, God's word, and answerable even to the eldership. C, he is to blank the church of God, Acts 20:28. Okay, feed, that's a word there. Another word? Tend. Okay, and they're called overseers, so you might even say that. D, he is to blank for your souls, Hebrews 13:17. Watch. As I said, we can't turn to every verse, but I think this is probably, if someone were going to tell me or ask me, nobody has, but if they were, what's one of the most important verses concerning the work of an elder? I would say Hebrews 13:17. And of course, it deals with what is now below verse number 4, what should elders expect from us. But it also deals very specifically with their work. It says, obey your leaders and submit to them. Now this is, for they are keeping watch over your souls, as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Watching for your souls. You know, the rule, overseer, the next word we're going to find in E, it's all dealing with the flock of God, God's people. And here's the key, watching for those souls. It's like everything else is subservient, I think, to that. And as they will have to give an account, and I've heard somebody say before, well, they're going to have to give an account for you, what you've done. I think what they're going to have to give an account of is have they done that watching for the souls. And so it's almost like, and it's like, church, you recognize this and respect it and honor it. When a man says, yes, I will be an elder, it's almost like he's taken on even another criteria of judgment on Judgment Day. You see, generally, we're not told to watch for the souls of the brethren like the elder is. So, very much his work. Okay, E, he is to blank you, 1 Thessalonians 5:12. 1 Thessalonians, not 1 Timothy. What would be that word? He is to admonish. What does the word admonish mean? Correct or warn. It's not an easy thing to do. F, what is at least one thing elders are cautioned against? 1 Peter 5:3. Not what? Not lording it over. The English Standard says not domineering over those in charge, or not lords over God's heritage. So that's at least one thing elders are cautioned against. Now, what should elders expect from us? There's a lot that God's expecting of elders, but it's a two-way street. That God's expecting some things of us towards these elders. Okay, we're getting there. That's the B. A, we are told to, okay, know is King James Version. Anybody put anything else different? English Standard says respect. But know and recognize from the King James Version and New King James. Respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. So know, recognize, respect. B, we are told to, this is Hebrews 13:17, obey your leaders and submit to them. And there again, kind of sometimes depending on personality, some people fall in line easily, and some people they just don't want to, But that's what it says: obey and to submit. And it's kind of this way, and we need to realize this: every human is to obey and submit, every one of them. And somebody might say, well, what about the elder? It's already acknowledged. He's got to obey and submit to God and His Word, and he actually has to obey and submit to the eldership. So everybody has got to obey and submit. But the members, with regards to elders, very clear, obey and submit. See, we should blank your leaders and blank their faith. Hebrews 13:17. What's that? Okay, watch or remember and imitate their faith. D, should the elders confront us if we have been overcome with sin? I got one yes. Do I have a resounding yes? But typically, does the person who's been overcome with sin want to be confronted about that sin? No, I think that's true. Is it easy to confront somebody about wrongdoing? For most people, no, it's not. And I would say this too, for it to be effective, it takes a lot of prayer and effort and careful consideration, etc., etc., etc. Can there be some people better at doing it than others? Well, certainly, possibly so. But it is a duty they have. And so the reality is we need to be appreciative. We need to be as well cautious. We need to be reasonable. We need to be respectful. When we're confronted, what's the first thing that sometimes people do? What? Get defensive? Get very defensive? What? Angry? Get mad, leave? I tell you what, sometimes else people do. Then they begin to scrutinize that person and want to say, well, and try to find fault in them. You know, and all of these things, that's not going to help us. That is not going to help us at all. And we've seen public figures get criticized, and they just, their way of doing it, answering it, they attack that person that criticized them. No place for that. Could you say a little louder? How the person is confronted can make a huge difference. But the reality is, some people just might not want to be confronted at all. But I would hope, here's this, I hope that we would be thankful that there's somebody in our life that cares enough about us to try to set us back on the right path. But it's kind of like, we really need to bring that up, because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Should the elders confront us? Yes. And what should be our attitude if this happens? Kind of discuss that. And then what shouldn't be the attitude of someone confronted by the elders? That's kind of been in discussion too. And I'm saying all this quick because the bell should have been ringing. Has the bell, did y'all hear it? Okay, we're halfway through after the first bell for the second bell to ring. Would anybody like to do a good bell? Anybody can make a good bell sound? Ding, ding. Ding, ding. Okay. On page 16, these are the Eastern Meadows elders. And we're talking to a crowd. I think all of you know this and know who they are. But in case somebody didn't or doesn't, and like I said, the design of this was ultimately even maybe to be used and could have to be updated with some things. But these are the elders. And by the way, since we haven't heard a bell yet, okay, Tim, you're in here. Tim, what area do you work primarily in? Okay, Paul, you're next. What area are you working primarily in?
Oh, education and involvement.
Okay, Alan is not here. Alan is grounds and technology. Roy is not here. Roy is meeting, and he is doing elder work right now in a mission meeting. But missions and worship. Okay, Mike. Okay. Building, congregation leads, and Ted.
Finance, transportation, and fellowship.
Okay. Now, it is not the case, of course, that they have arbitrary and complete rule in this area. They are elders in an eldership, but they have kind of divided up the workload in that manner. And so it's kind of like this. If you've got a question or concern, the best place to go is to that one dealing with that particular area. The second bell should be ringing. I don't know if anybody heard that ding ding. The week ding ding.
I have only 7:08, don't you have a few more minutes?
Hardly. Next week, we're going to actually look a little bit more at elders and kind of emphasizing more what the elders should expect from me. And then the next one is about deacons and what does it mean for deacons to deek and who are the Eastern Meadows deacons. And I do not have pictures because we got a lot of deacons and didn't want to have to hunt for all those pictures and get them in here. And we will call it class dismissed, and we